Welcome back, everybody, to the final episode of the Silmarillion we're covering here on the Hardcover Hooligans podcast. My name is Mac. As always, with me is Danylo, and Danylo, I have a question for you. Actually, it's more of a request.
Oh, okay.
I am really hoping you haven't done this, but if you have, I don't know, we'll cut it out and ask a different question, but Google the size comparison of Ancalagon the Black and Glaurung. Live. I want a live reaction.
Okay. You'll hear the tippy tapping of my Glaurung. Am I gonna be put on some list for this?
No.
Glaurung versus Ancalagon. Size comparison. Like an image?
Yeah.
What?
Is it not? Maybe I should have just put the one that I found. He's like the size of he's like the size of like the mountain. Like he's like the biggest thing in the universe.
He's so big.
Yeah.
Glaurung just doesn't have any wings.
No, yeah. Also, you learn that none of the other dragons had wings until Ancalagon the Black.
Yeah, because they're capital W worms in the old sense, because Tolkien was a purist in his mythology, in his fake dragons, and all the winged dragons come from boring worms.
But now these bad boys are introduced.
So does that make the when Turin Turumbar slays Glaurung a little less impressive? I think it does. In my mind, he's like a Komodo dragon that can't fly away. Yeah, duh.
Yeah. But I guess he must move kind of quick, no? Or else...
Well, he does have the spell that freezes you in place with his eyes, so I guess
that's true. He does
there's
have that. If only we were all so lucky as to be able to freeze our enemies with our eyes, so that we could cast evil magics onto them. So we are talking about the ending of the Silmarillion, and I guess more, but I have way less to say about the Akalabeth and the Rings of Power in the Third Age, other than the big important stuff, because we sort of already talked about Numenor in the appendices of Return of the King.
Yeah, it's all the stuff we already know, because this was written first, and then he decided, this is, I'll write a trilogy about this, not a trilogy about Turin Turumbar.
Right. But in this episode, we're only, on paper, it sounds like we're only covering very few chapters, but I imagine it will take as long as it has been taking. We're going to be talking about Turin Turumbar, the fall and ruin of Doriath, of Tuor and the fall of Gondolin, and of Ariandil and the War of Wrath, which is awesome. This is Turin Turumbar is one of the three big stories in the book. I think I talked about this last time, but I think I
thought you were going to say he's the saddest man of all time, which
he
true.
Is. But like the three things, right? Like there's the thing about the Silmarils, there's the Children of Húrin, which is this, and the fall of Gondolin are like the three big things that get the most page time. Beren and Luthien too, but wait, hang on. There's like a real thing. Hang on, let me just look this up real quick. Where did I see that? I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe we'll just cut this out. I swear to God, I thought I saw something that Tolkien was like, well, the three... It might be Beren and Luthien, the Children of Húrin, and the Fall of Gondolin. He had, like, the Fall of Gondolin planned out big time. Like, that was his, like...
Oh.
Because in the whole thing, it's like, but this was the first evil of the...
You don't create a hidden city that can never be found with tight security if you're not going to eventually overrun it with Balrogs and dragons.
I will say, though, the fact that... Húrin is the one that spills the beans is pretty funny. I think that's pretty like anticlimactic the way that happens. It's not really how it gets found, but it is how Morgoth gets tipped off. But we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
I guess the first thing we have to talk about, we didn't talk about this last time. We touched on it a little bit. The fifth battle of the world, the battle of unnumbered tears. Just quickly, because I want to get into this Turin Turumbar stuff.
Every battle is like...
There's
the
five,
biggest battle. There's five, and everyone's the biggest one that's ever happened.
The biggest one so far.
But it's the battle of Sudden Flame, the battle of Unnumbered Tears. They should just call it like World War One, you know?
Right. This is the one where all of our friends and heroes lose. Maedhros, he learns that since Beren got the Silmaril, he assumes that Morgoth is weak, and so they like strike, but before they can really strike, there's like a bunch of Easterlings in his army that are under the god, like they're spies for Morgoth, and then Maedhros gets betrayed.
Is this the son, one of the sons of
Feanor?
All right, I'm slowly. Yes. I'm like shift. I need to shift into like Silmarillion mode.
Fingon Felagund dies. No, sorry, different guy. Fingon dies fighting Gothmog, the Lord of the Balrogs. Huor dies. Huor's the father of Tuor, which will be important later. Hurin gets captured in this battle, and a curse is laid upon his family, and he has to like sit in a chair and watch the curse play out in real time, which is just terrible.
Doesn't Morgoth hang him from Thangorodrim? Just put him on top of the mountain?
He's sitting in a throne, like he can't get up out of the chair, and he's looking out over all the land and watching it like the good guys lose. It's fucked up. But that's just, I just had to get that out of the way, just so that things are bad. Things are not looking good during the time of Turin Turumbar.
And there's a lot of overlap, because I reread Turin Turumbar this morning, and then some other summary stuff, and then a lot of this stuff is like overlapping with each other. Like his story happens, and the next chapter like has stuff that overlaps with Turin Turumbar's story and everything.
He's born... or when he's 8 years old is the year that Hurin gets captured, which happens at the end of the Battle of Unnumbered Tears and stuff like that. So, some important characters up top. Morwen is the wife of Hurin and the mom of Turin, and...
so, refresher on Hurin. He was just a strong guy who, like...
No, he is
hung out with the elves, right?
He's
like the leader of men, right?
He's the one of the great heroes of men. Like there's like the three great houses, and he's the head of House Hador.
Got it. Hurin, Turin, Huar, Tuar, Hadar.
All the men have silly names. Compared to the elves, their names are definitely silly.
If only it was as easy to name your children. You just change the first letter of your name and then give that to your son.
Tudor, Woodor, Fludor,
Panillo.
And Beleg is, I guess, maybe the other main character in this thing, but he's not around in the whole thing.
Elf, right?
Yeah, he's an elf. He's an elf. Beleg Strongbow. He helped Beren fight the wolf. The classic stuff.
Classic.
Okay, so Morwen gives birth to Turin. Hurin gets captured. Their land, Dor-lómin, gets invaded by the Easterlings, and Morwen sends Turin to Doriath, Doriath is a refresher. It's
Melian, the girdle.
Right. Thingol's house. Morwen then has a daughter named Nienor. Turin gets to Thingol, and Thingol is like, "Wow, you're from this great line of men. I'll raise you like my son," because now he likes men. Remember, because Beren was like,
got him a
"Hey, men are sweet."
Yep.
They send the message to Morwen to come to Doriath, and she says no. And Turin and Morwen talk via messenger for a very long time, and then one day the messenger stops showing up, and Turin is like, "This is unacceptable. Something is like the world is becoming more evil," and so he leaves Doriath, and the messengers had sent him the dragon helm of his house, which is just like the coolest helmet of all time, and he patrols the borders with Beleg Strongbow, the borders of Doriath.
And is Morwen is Turin's mom, right?
Yeah. Yep. During this, the patrol doesn't go super well because like they all either get separated or like die and split up, and so Turin gets back to Doriath years later, and he looks really fucked up and like old and bad. And some elf named Saros is like, "What are you, old bitch? What are you doing back here, you old bitch?" And then Turin's like really tall and scary strong, and he like makes Saros run naked through the woods, and Saros like slips and falls and dies. He falls into a chasm and dies.
And Turin, this begins Turin's slow descent into having the worst life in the entire universe, because he blames himself and just like self-exiles.
Even though Mablung, who's an elf, says like, if you just go apologize to Thingol, I'm sure everything will be fine. But Turin runs away and he joins a group of bad boys.
And doesn't like Mablung go to Thingol? It's like,
Yeah,
this
tells
will
him
happen.
anyway,
And
and
Thingol's
Thingol's
like, it's fine. Tell him to come back. And Turin's like, no, I can't. I'm too embarrassed, I guess.
Right, and then he leaves, and then Beleg asks, Thingol's like, well, if he's not going to come back, Beleg, you have to go get Turin and make him come back. And on the run, Turin renames himself, and this happens a lot.
He's got like
story.
7 names.
He is constantly renaming himself. This first one is terrible. It's Nathan. He names himself Nathan. Yeah, I know it's probably Neithan, Neithan, but it's Nathan, and I think that's funny. So he's like, they're camping, right? They're camping in the woods with the bad boys, and Turin like leaves to, I don't know, do whatever. And Beleg, he sneaks up, and Turin's gone, so he doesn't see Beleg, and then the outlaws think that Beleg is a spy, so they capture Beleg and beat the shit out of him, and then Turin comes back, and he's like, what are you doing? And so he saves Beleg from the outlaws, and it's a big happy reunion, but they have mysterious words for each other, and Turin does not want to return to Doriath, and he tells Beleg, well, you said I'll meet you in Doriath, well, how you can meet me at Amon-Rud, which is a mountain that he doesn't know is going to be his new fortress, or his new base of operations, which is very funny later when he meets a character and he says, hey, come hang out with me at Amon-Rud, and he's like, what, really? Like, that's where I told the guy to meet me, like, this is perfect. So Beleg goes back to Thingol, even though he doesn't want to. He wants to stay with Turin, and then he begs Thingol's leave to, like, go back and just hang out with Turin full time, and he says yes, and because you found him, which was crazy, you get to have anything you want. And he's like, I want a sword that's not the worst thing in the world, because like apparently like Beleg, all of Beleg's equipment was made by like termites and is like really bad and small, and
yeah,
for
that's
babies.
Canonical, made by termites.
All his gear is MBT, and he needs a new sweet sword, and he goes into the armory and he picks the darkest, most evil sword of all time.
Well, Thingol's like, so we have 2 dark, evil, crazy swords, and one of them's mine, so you can't pick that one. And he's like, well, then I'll have the one you're not using.
Yeah. Englachel, a sword made by the dark elf Eöl. Remember that bad guy who got thrown off a cliff?
Yeah.
And Melian tells him, he was like, hey, I would definitely not take that, because even though Eöl is dead, it's still like infected maybe with dark magic or something.
Yeah, and Maeglin is still around,
right.
So like
he's not dead. But he gets some lembas bread, and this is just a fun detail that I like, is that this is the first of the only 2 times where human beings will ever eat lembas bread. Like,
yep.
The other time is obviously the one we know, which happens in the, Lord of the Rings. But this is like, he gives it to Melian gives him the lembas bread, and Beleg returns to the outlaws, and he's like, here, have this bread. And it actually works out, because all the outlaws are like sick and all fucked up, and he heals them with the lembas bread when he comes back.
It is, and he did, and it's specifically mentioned, like, this almost never happens,
right, yeah.
where the elves give people lembas, and everyone reading it is like, wow,
how fun, because we know
they eat bread in the other book.
For whatever reason, I just don't, and I mean that because I don't remember and seem to have forgot to write it in my notes. The gang of outlaws needs to find a new hideout. I think it's just because they are getting fucked up by orcs.
Because they're just wandering around the forest. I don't think they need. I think they need a hideout.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Because they meet a dwarf whose name is Meme.
Oh my god,
LOL.
Fucking Meme.
And they
that's a meme in my head, but I guess
meme.
It's,
yeah, there's like
meme.
The dwarven umlaut or whatever. So I don't actually know, but they meet 3 dwarves in the woods, and then all 3 of them run away, and then they fire an arrow after them, and then Meme comes back and he's like, okay, I'll lead you guys to my hideout if you don't kill me. And then when they get back to the hideout, one of his sons is dying of an arrow wound, and they're like, that's so weird. How did that happen?
And well, let's just say this isn't the last time Meme just at the drop of a hat shows a bunch of scary people exactly where he lives.
Yes, it is not the last time. Meme leads them to this mountain called Amon-Rud. Beleg comes back. Now this is important. Meme hates Beleg because he's an elf, but not just because he's an elf. Mm-hmm. Meme and like the group of petty dwarves left the Blue Mountains and came into Beleriand, and were originally in Nargothrond, which is like the underground cave that Felagund like had, right?
Yep.
Or Orodred is now the king of, and and will feature in this story again. But then the elves showed up and were like, no, this is ours now. And so, like, very specifically, like, that sect of dwarves and these Noldor fucking hate each other because of the dispute over the underground cave.
And these dwarves, like, that meme is a part of, don't have, like, a connection to the other dwarves. Like, because the other dwarves have, like, they've traded with the elves, and, like, they're kind of wary, but they haven't. But, But these, they hate them.
Right, yes, they hate them. And so when Beleg shows up, Meme really, really hates Beleg. And Turin and Beleg guard the surroundings of the mountain, and like a bunch of it's like leaderless men, it's described. So you have to imagine like wandering bands of nomadic people, when their like leaders or whatever get killed, they flock to this mountain because it's become this safe, protected place. And this is where Turin renames himself the second time to Gorthal, which means Dread Helm, and that's just because he wears a cool helmet.
He's a big, awesome dragon helm. Yep.
Yeah, and so
and this is what Morgoth is like. Wait, hold on.
Yeah,
this sounds like something I can meddle in.
Yes.
Remember that curse that happened? Time to activate.
Time to get involved. And so he sends an orc battalion out, and they capture Meme, and he's like, "Wait, don't kill me! I'll show you where Turin is. I'll show you where I live."
With, I understand it's threat of death, but come on, Meme. If you want to not be the worst guy ever.
So he betrays the gang, and the orcs capture Turin. Isn't it funny? It describes the slaughter of all of his friends, and then it says he throws a net over Turin, which, I mean, like, I've never been asleep and covered in a net.
Because the orcs, or Morgoth or whatever, is like, we promise we won't kill Turin Turumbar.
Oh, right, yes.
And Mim is like, okay, again, the classic trick in the book, kill everyone else, but throw a net over Turin. Like, come on, dude.
And there's like a little exit of the mountain where a bunch of the warriors fled and like fought their last fight, and Beleg was with them, and Meme realizes that Beleg isn't dead, so he grabs the sword and almost kills him, but Beleg like wakes up and like pushes him away and grabs the sword, and Meme runs away scared. And he eats his lembas bread, and he heals in the mountain, because the orcs don't take over the mountain because they're trying to get back to Thangorudrim
Turin to Morgoth.
Yeah, Turin to the big boss man upstairs. So he goes to try to rescue him, and he runs into an elf named Gwyndor, who used to be like second captain of Nargothrond or whatever, but he was enthralled by or no, that's wrong. He was taken into thraldom by Morgoth and used as a slave, because all the elves of Nargothrond are like really good smiths and stuff because they live in the caves and whatnot. And so, but he escapes because
Morgoth
he knew
would,
the
like,
secret
take
exits.
elves to it's a waste to kill them, so he like has them work in the mines and build him swords and stuff.
And he knows where Turin went, so they go to rescue Turin, and this is just Danylo, do you want to talk about this? The second saddest thing that ever happened?
The saddest thing ever. Yeah, so Beleg and Gwyndor go to save their buddy Turin, and they like go on they like find the orc camp, and Turin's like been tortured and he's like half asleep, and they take Turin away and rescue him and kill all the orcs. And then it's said it was a dark and stormy night, and Turin's sort of like kind of sleepy, whatever, and Beleg has his sword and is trying to cut the sort of whatever's bounding, like the shackles or manacles around Turin, and Turin wakes up and is like, holy shit, there's people trying to kill me with a sword, and he turns around and kills Beleg.
Yeah.
Which is very sad. And then there's a flash of lightning, and he sees Beleg's face, and he realizes what has happened, and he just starts weeping and is like frozen in grief.
Well, no, he doesn't cry yet. He just like is totally motionless and like won't move or talk, and he just sits next to the corpse through the whole. Him and Gwyndor like just sit there through the whole storm, and the orcs think the orcs like leave because they don't think that he'd be so stupid as to be hiding so close.
They think he got away. It's like, oh, it's a storm. We can't track him. Obviously, got away. So the orcs leave.
But Gwyndor and Turin bury him, and Gwyndor's like, I know what'll help. So he leads him to this like river or lake or whatever that's been blessed by Ulmo. And when Turin drinks of it, like then like the spell or madness is released, and he cries and feels better. And then Gwyndor gives him Anglakel, and he names it Gurthang, which I didn't write down what that means, but he renames it because of course he does, because that's Turin's that's his gimmick. And then they go to Nargothrond, because Gwyndor's like, hey, I used to be king shit at Nargothrond, and he tells and then but before we get there, Turin holds him back, and he's like, whoa, hey, but don't tell him I'm Turin. You should tell him I'm Mormagil, which means Black Sword, because he doesn't want all this clout from being Hurin's kid, like this great line of men. He just wants to be some guy.
He wants to start this. You could say is a common theme / his fatal flaw.
He always wants to start fresh.
He always wants to start fresh after a horrible twist of fate because of this curse.
Yeah, because his flaw is that he's not coming to terms with what's going on. He just keeps moving forward, and it's very sad. And when they reach Nargothrond, an elven maid named Findulius, she's like, wow, Turin's the hottest hunk I ever saw.
Look at his big black sword.
And him and his BBS.
I did not mean that in any sort of weird way until it came out.
And Gwyndor apparently used to be, he used to be a pretty good-looking cat, but when you are in a deep, scary cave being forced to do manual labor for 400 years, you're not as handsome as you were coming out, as you were going in. And so he finds that Findulius is like, I don't know, Gwyndor, you're not really doing it for me anymore. And this Turin guy is awesome, but Turin's sort of
he's a loner.
He
doesn't want.
Yeah,
he's like, I don't want to be in love. I killed my best friend.
Yeah, and this like this makes Gwyndor even more mad. He's like, oh my god, like what the hell's going on? You used to love me, and now you love this guy. And it'd be one thing if he loved you back, but he doesn't. So like, what the hell are you doing? And he tells her, he's like, well, yeah, I know you think you love Mormagil, but his real name is Turin. And she's like, I don't care, he's awesome still. And then Turin goes to Gwyndor, and he's like, what the hell, you can't say that, my name is doomed, like the name of Turin is doomed. And Gwyndor's like, no bro, you are doomed. It has nothing to do with your name. It is you are bad news. And he's like, whatever. Yep. But Orodreth, the king, is like, Turin, you're like our best friend around here.
Yeah.
It's like, remember Huor and all these guys? Yeah, we love you guys.
You want a promotion?
Right. You want to be the hand of the king? And he's like, I guess. And my first decree we're going to build a big... Okay, Nargothrond is inaccessible. And they need weapons and armor because they're going to go fight the orcs. And so Turin's big idea is, what if we build a big bridge to make it way more accessible to get the weapons and armor quickly, and we can disperse our forces faster. And as soon as he does this, a messenger of Ulmo shows up and is like, you need to get rid of this bridge. I have no fucking idea what you're thinking, but all this bridge is going to do is allow the orcs to move in. And then Turin's like, well, they can't move in if we move out. And then they do. And so they go and attack all the orcs.
The fact that this bridge, 1, exists, and 2, was built very well becomes a problem later on.
Also, this is not a big deal for right now, but it will be. Morwen and Nienor flee to Doriath because they're like slaves in Dorloman, and they don't, that's not great.
Yeah. So again, Morwen, Turin's mom, Nienor,
right,
Turin's sister.
Yes.
And they were separated. Now they don't know where Turin is. Turin doesn't know where they are.
And Turin has never seen Nienor because he's like not only 10 years older than her, was like 15 when she was born. So
right, when he went to live with Thingol or whatever. Yeah.
So they battle like the orcs and stuff, and they're losing bad. And so Turin and Orodreth dies, and Gwyndor dies, and the bridge is being used to sack Nargothrond. And he's like, oh my god. So Turin leaves, and he comes back, and he like crosses the bridge into Nargothrond, and then behind him Glaurung like pops up on the bridge, and he turns around and he casts breathe fire on him, but he has a fire enchantment on his helm. It's the dragon helm, so the fire doesn't work. And then he fails his Constitution saving throw and becomes he casts fear on literally that is what happens, and he casts fear on Turin because that's what dragons do. That's what dragons do, and Dungeons and Dragons. And this frozen on this bridge. He's frozen in place, and this part of the there's like not a lot of the Silmarillion that feels like, I don't know, this is like cool, like I mean, like there's like the scene of him being like completely standing still and he can't stop looking at Glaurung, and then the orcs like lead Findulius like right by him, and she's like calling his name and like begging him to help, and he can't, and it's like right next to him and he can't move, and he's just like focused on Glaurung, and Glaurung tells him that, well, you've got to go save your mom and sister because they're in big trouble too. They're not. They're
you abandoned them, and it's your fault. Like he like gets inside his head. He like says a bunch of
that they left where they problem were at, and they're hanging out in Doriath where everything's fine. But he doesn't know that, and Morgoth specifically told Glaurung to not let him save Findulius or Finduilas or whatever, however you say it.
And so this like fucks with Turin's head, and he's all like, oh no, I feel so bad, this is all my fault, everything in my life is my fault because of this fucking curse, and I'm just the saddest boy that ever lived.
So he leaves to go back to Dor-lómin and save Morwen and Nienor, and when he gets there, they're like, they left like a long time ago, like.
Well, and then in the meantime, that's when like Glaurung and all the orcs sack Nargothrond, and now Glaurung, the Great Worm, lives in Nargothrond.
He sleeps on his hoard of gold. Classic. What a classic image.
Classic. No wings. No wings.
He's just a worm asleep. He's a sleepy worm. Turin learns that Morwen and Nienor left Dor-lómin, and he goes all Anakin Skywalker, and he gets mad and he kills like all of the Easterlings who live there. Yeah. But this is like bad because that's still where like his line of people, like the House of Hador, lives, and so they're like, you can't just show up and kill all the people who are like who have what's that word, like seized control of this territory, because now they're going to punish us, so please fucking leave. And so Turin does, and then he realizes, he's like, oh my god, what have I done? I'm so stupid.
The dragon got in my head.
He's like, I've got to go find Findulias, and he goes and he finds her like grave, and he's like, oh my god, and he starts crying, and then he just renames himself on the spot Turumbar, which means Master of Doom, because he keeps fulfilling the doom of his line.
And every turn he's like, why did I do that? Oh no.
Every single fucking time. And then that
leads him to do something else, and then after that he's like, no, but why did I do that?
Word reaches Doriath that Turin is alive, and then Morwen is like, well, if Turin is alive, I gotta go see him. It's been so long since I've seen him. And Nienor disguises herself as like one of the guards sent to take Morwen to Turin, and she
even though
leaves
they don't
with
really
them.
Know where he is, they just sort of leave, right?
Yeah, they just know he's alive, and so they go to where they've heard, because they find that the Mormileg or whatever is Turin. So like wherever the black sword was last is where Turin is. And so Glaurung, they like cross through Nargothrond, and that's where Glaurung is, and so he
takes a bath.
Yeah, he takes a bath, and the steam is evil.
But he's very hot. And so it creates a reek that just spreads all over, and the party of Nienor and Morwen sort of gets separated. And Morwen is sort of lost forever.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe until the very, very end.
Yeah, she's wandering forever, and Nienor, like, she meets up with some other people, but then loses them, and she's, like, standing on a hill, and she looks over, and she sees Glaurung,
above the...
just, like, peeking his head over.
On the hill, above, like, all the steam, and Glaurung's resting his head on a hill, and he looks in her eyes, and does a mind wipe.
Yes. Yeah.
And so he causes her to freeze, and also causes her to forget everything she ever knew, and her name, and everything.
Yep. And she stumbles upon Turin or Turin finds her crying at the grave of Finduilas, and he's like, "What are you crying about? I'm gonna name you Tear Maiden because you won't stop crying." So her new name is Niniel, which means Tear Maiden, and they sort of instantly fall in love. And we, the reader, know that they are brother and sister, but they do not know that, and so that is.
And it's like. She's like, "Oh wait, I don't know what. Oh, I'll name you." And she's like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "It's Turin." And she's like, "Huh, I don't know why, but I kind of like that name."
yeah. And then later, I guess it's next. They go to this place called Brethil, which is like this forest, and this guy named Brandir, who is quote unquote lame. He is lame. The story calls him lame. We learn later that he has a club foot. That is the words used in the book. Brandir loves Niniel because she's cool and whatever. But Niniel loves Turin, and he tells her that they're related. And Niniel doesn't. She's like, "I don't think that's right, but that does make me feel weird." And so Turin asks Niniel to marry him, and she says no. And then 3 years later, he asks again, and then they do get married.
Yep.
And Niniel gets pregnant, and because
she makes Turin promise, like, "Hey, if we get married, you can't like leave to do battle for a year."
And he says, "Okay, fine." So he does, unless that the forest of Brethil comes directly under threat. He cannot go out. And then a year later, Glaurung shows up in the forest of Brethil, and so Turin's like, "You know what I gotta do? I gotta put on my big boy pants, you know." And so he makes his plan to defeat Glaurung, and his plan is to sneak up and stab it. What a plan! And so he leaves, and he takes two people with him, Dorlas and the one that died. I guess they both die, but Hathron or whatever.
Sure.
Niniel followed, like a group follows, because like Turin over the couple years has become the de facto.
Got to see him sneak up on this dragon and stab it in the stomach.
He's become the de facto like ruler of Brethil, even though Brandir is actually the lord of Brethil.
That's like Turin can't help but be the coolest guy ever and also the most doomed guy ever. Yeah. Like, no matter where he goes, he always ends up being in charge and the best warrior, so much so they has to change his name to be like, I need to start again. But then also the worst thing ever happens to him.
And it keeps happening to him, and it's going to happen again at least 2 more times. Brandir begs Niniel and the group to not just follow him to this dragon, because if he dies, the dragon is just going to kill all of them. And he's right. Like, that is what would happen.
But they're like, "You're not going to not kill the dragon." He's like, "Guys, I could not kill the dragon. That is a definite possibility. Do you know who I am?"
But they follow, and Brandir's like, "Fine, I won't be the leader anymore. Whatever. He could be your leader. Do whatever you want." So he goes with them. And they're about to sneak into the place, but Dorlas, who's like the brother of Brandir, he like wusses out and he doesn't go with them. And Turin and this other guy go, and they're climbing up this mountain, and then a big rock falls and it kills the one guy, so it's just Turin climbing up the mountain. And he gets up the top and he stabs Glaurung in the tummy, and
all the way up to the hilt.
Yeah, all the way up to the hilt, deep, and then Glaurung like falls and he crashes into the river. And he climbs down and he goes to like gloat over Glaurung, and he takes the blade out, and like a bunch of black blood like squirts out all over his hand, and it burns him really bad, so bad he like faints. And Niniel sees that and thinks that Turin's dead, and she also is like all she saw was like the dragon crash and scream, and there's like a big, because he's like on fire all the time, there's like a big scorch marks everywhere, sort of into
the river, and so there's like smoke still.
And so she thinks he's dead, but Brandir is like, come with me, I'll lead you to where it's safe. So Niniel goes with Brandir, and then realizes that Brandir is leading her home and not to where the dragon is. So she's like, "I'm not going with you, I gotta go to the love of my life." And so she leaves, and then Brandir's so mad on his way back, he sees Dorlas like cowering in the woods, and he just kills his brother for like, he's pissed off. He's got a lot of problems. There's a lot of people have a lot of problems in this story. And And Niniel goes and finds Turin, and she wraps up his hand in bandages, and Glaurung like wakes up and for like one last thing, and he's like, "Good job, sister of the guy you're fucking," and then dies.
And he undoes his mind wipe, and she immediately is like, Oh my god.
Yep.
He calls Turin her twice beloved because he loved her as a brother and as a husband.
It's disgusting.
And then she throws herself off of a cliff.
Yep, she does. And the Brandir gets back to Brethel, and he's like, "Oh my god, they're all dead, but Glaurung's dead too." And then now this is like, okay, this is confusing in the way that, like, it's not confusing, but it's like very interesting in the way that I think somebody who just read The Lord of the Rings and then read this book would never expect something like this to be in it. So Brethel shows up, or Brandir shows up, and he's like, they're all dead. Turin wakes up and finds his way back to Brethel, and the people of Brethel are like, "Oh, he's crazy. He said you're dead. And he also said Niniel is dead. So that can't be true. So he must be lying." And then Brandir's like, "No, I'm not lying. The dragon said that. Like, that is what he said, that you guys are related. Like, this whole thing is like a farce.
Yeah.
It should have never happened." And then Turin...
it's like, how
because
dare
he's
you?
alive, thinks like Niniel must be alive too, because why would he have followed him to the thing? Because he was lying. So he kills him and then leaves, and he runs into Mablung.
Kills Brandir.
Yeah.
Right, because he's like, "Oh, you're spreading lies about me because you're jealous," you know?
Yeah. And he runs into Mablung, who's like a captain of Thingol, who is in the story earlier too. And Mablung says, like, no, that, like, Mablung is
right
on the trail of his sister and mom, and says, like, what happened, and that the dragon was right. And
Turin is like, "Oh no.
Oh shit.
I've killed 3 friends and my sister."
So Turin asks his sword, like, if it'd be willing to kill him, and the sword answers, and it's like, yes, because it's so sad that Beleg and Brandir were unjustly killed, and so he puts the hilt on the ground and throws himself on it. And that's how the story ends, but a good detail is that Nianor's body is never found or recovered, so you don't know if she's dead or not. I just like that.
Doesn't Morwen come back too? Like, she's alive.
In the next chap, in the Ruin of Doriath, yeah.
So his mom's still alive, but...
Yeah, Morwen is alive.
So, that's Turin Turumbar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've read it. I read it a while ago when we were reading the first time. Then I read it again today. I don't know if I've always just like been in a bad mood when I'm reading Turin Turumbar, or reading Turin Turumbar puts me in a bad mood. I don't know, but either way, it's very sad.
Well, it's just funny because, like, the last, like, big, long chapter about a specific person is really happy, and it's Beren and Luthien, and then this is so not that.
Uh-huh. Most cursed man of all time.
Yeah, but it is so good, and, like, there's a reason that they made the children... There's, like, a Children of Hurin book, which is just, like, more of this, and more specifically this, and what's going on, and, yeah, there's just more details about what's going on. But yeah, this is awesome. I mean, it's not awesome. I love this this story.
It's very Oedipus.
Oh my god!
And also very like like medieval epic poem. Like there's a whole ton of like, of course there's like the dragon, but there's a whole there's always, like, when I was in school I read a bunch of these crazy things that no one ever reads in like Middle English, and it's all this like, it's a guy and
it's Beowulf.
He marries someone, and then, like, based on incomplete information, accidentally kills someone, and then goes does something else, and then there's another crazy twist of fate, and you know, and it's also like very like Greek to like Oedipus and everything. Yeah,
it's very very Greek, Shakespearean. It's like this could be. I think this could be a really cool play. Yeah. If like, of all the things in this book,
opera.
Could you
imagine like doing an opera for this? That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. So somebody get on that. I'm not calling copyright on that because I don't know how to write an opera. Yeah, we're gonna write the opera. The Turin Turumbar. You couldn't call it of Turin Turumbar because you'd have to call it something else. What could you call it? I don't know.
The Black Sword or something.
The Black Sword. That's not bad.
What's the Master of Doom? You'd have to call like Master of Doom.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Doesn't he change his name at another point, or someone says like, you're not Master? No, you're not Doom's Master. Doom is the master of you, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, man.
It's constantly happening. Yeah, you're really burning them up. Okay. So the next chapter, The Ruin of Doriath. I wonder what this is going to be about.
Is it more? Is the end of the Silmarillion all just a bunch of bad stuff? Yes, it is. The slow decline of the world into the
slow decline of the beautiful world into the shit show that we know at the beginning of Lord of the Rings. Yes. So the good news, Hurin is released. Bad news, he is so unbelievably depressed and old. He's so old. And he's still, like, maybe under the thraldom of Morgoth, but if he is, he's not really aware of it. He's just really depressed. And
Morgoth releases him as like, oh, if I release him, he'll lead me to Gondolin, which is sort of what happens.
He instantly
That's
does.
exactly what happens.
He leads him to like a mountain range, and Hurin is like, "Oh, let me in, please."
And Morgoth's like, I wonder if it's. He's like, I've nailed down the general area now.
Thanks to my incredible detective work, I've surmised it might be in this mountain range. Thorondor, the great eagle, he sees that Hurin wants back in, and he goes to Turgon, and Turgon says, like, no, it's okay, you should bring him back. Maybe you feel bad. But when Thorondor comes back, Hurin is gone.
He wandered off.
Yeah, he wanders off, and he goes to the grave of Turin, and he finds Morwen, his wife, they've been separated from for so long, like mourning over the grave, and they talk, and in the night they hold each other. And Morwen dies in his arms in the night, and he like buries her too, and then wakes up, and he's like, I got a bone to pick with Thingol of Nargoth or of Doriath, but first I got to get me a sweet necklace. And so he goes to Nargothrond, and Glaurung is dead, right? So he's not in Nargothrond anymore, but you know who is in Nargothrond? It's me.
Who is so happy to be back to Nargothrond.
It's our
being
boy
the worst
Meme.
dwarf ever.
And Hurin, Meme's like, who are you that goes there? And Hurin is like, I know you brought those orcs to... Because Hurin saw everything that happened to his family. And so he knows
because Morgoth showed it to him like on TV. Like it was a Netflix.
Like
Netflix. The chapter of Turin Turumbar was like a Netflix season for Hurin.
He really binged. Oh, God, that's good to binge. It's good to binge in Angband.
I binged my son's horrible end.
I binged my son's death in Angband. Hurin kills Mim because he betrayed Turin. He takes Noglamir, the necklace that the dwarves made for Finrod Felagund, all the way back in
a long time ago.
Yeah, a long fucking time ago. He goes to Doriath to yell at Thingol because he thinks that Thingol was keeping Nienor and Morwen like hostage and away from their family, because the thing that he was seeing that was happening to his family was like it had like news bias to it, and so he like saw everything through how Morgoth would see it, which is like really bad and sad. But it wasn't sad because
or like if I think he thought like, oh, if Thingol wasn't keeping Turin from Morwen and Nienor, like they could have
hung out, like met up or something.
Like, incomplete information. Like it's like if you just told them, they'd be fine.
And there's this nice detail of Thingol, who feels he's like super pissed at this and really wants to kill him, but he feels so bad that he doesn't. And Melian tells him like what really happens, and that she's like, you know, an angel, so it kind of releases from his mind what he thought was the truth, and he sees the real truth, and he gives the Noglamir as a gift instead of like he like throws it at his feet originally, and then he picks it up and like places it in his lap, and he repents and leaves and throws himself off a cliff. Which so many people in this line
get thrown off a cliff.
So Thingol, he's like, God, this necklace is really bitchin'. However, it would be way cooler if I put the Silmaril in there, but I can't do that myself. If only only I knew a bunch of weird little freaks who'd love to do it for me, and I'm sure they'll give it back after I ask them to do it.
I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll just hire them and then pay them, and then it'll be fine. The Silmaril has never done anything weird to anybody.
Never, not one time. So Thingol hires the dwarves to put the Silmarillion into the Silmaril into the Noglamir, and after they're done, Thingol's like, "Thanks," and the dwarves say, "No, this is ours now. We made it, and we made the necklace in the first place for this one guy, and he's
so
dead."
Now the Silmaril's in the necklace, so ours necklace is ours.
Right, it's ours. And Thingol says,
like,
"Get
come
lost,"
on.
and the dwarves are like, "Okay," and then they stab him to death. They all stab him to death.
And that's how Thingol dies.
Yeah,
he's
he
like
just
the
dies.
one of the longest.
Thingol is one of the 3 elves at the beginning of the story, like the elf captain. He's Elwë, like chosen to lead the people. Like he's the oldest character in the story still alive so far, and he dies.
He gets stabbed by dwarves.
He gets stabbed by dwarves in his cave. There's like a funny thing where it's like none of the elves in Doriath know anything about smithing, but they do have a bunch of blacksmiths and like apartments for the dwarves to come in and stay and work at when they do, and it's just like
and
I
also
like fun
elves
details
know
like
nothing
that.
about smithing, but also Morgoth will keep the elves for hundreds of years because of all the smithing they know. So.
Right. So what's really going on?
Or Morgoth is just used to a really shitty quality of smithing.
Yeah.
Morgoth's like, you know smithing, and elves are like, we promise we know nothing about smithing. And Morgoth's like, yeah, I bet you can do it.
Yeah, you do.
Either do it or I'm gonna kill you. And he's like, okay, we'll try.
Melian gets really sad, and because she has sort of tied her life to one of the kindred, one of the children of Iluvatar, when he dies, sort of her powers fade, and the girdle of Melian disappears, and she goes back. She tells Mablung, she's like, I'm bouncing. I'm going to Valinor, and they're like, all right, that's fine, that makes sense. And the dwarves take the Silmaril and they destroy the halls of Menegroth, and Beren and Luthien hear word of this, and Beren and Luthien have a son now whose name is Dior, and Beren kills some dwarves and he gives the necklace to Luthien, and Dior leaves to go become the new king of Doriath because he is to Thingol, to Luthien, to Dior. He's the heir to the throne.
Yes. Yep.
Dior gets the necklace back, and then he knows that his mom and dad are dead, and it's just like this moment where, like, we don't know how many years have passed, but just messengers show up with a box and the necklace is in it, and Dior's like,
yeah,
I see.
Beren
Very
and
sad.
Luthien are gone.
And then these fucking dickheads, they're like, wait a minute, he put the Silmarillion in the necklace? He put a Silmaril in the necklace? And the Sons of Feanor are like, that sounds fucking awesome! I gotta get my hands on that! And so they attack Doriath.
Who are the Sons of Feanor still at this point? Like, it's sort of like after everything that's happened, it is unbelievable that the Sons of Feanor, like, these fucking assholes are still around, just like waiting for any news about a Silmaril to be like, we're gonna show up and make everything worse.
This is like the Bored Ape Yacht Club taken to the nth extreme. Like, every time like a new NFT would pop up on whatever.
It's like if Paris Hilton got an NFT and there were 3 assholes who were like gonna mug her for it.
Yeah, exactly. But except that NFTs in this are like really beautiful, are like unbelievably beautiful.
Well, I mean, Bored Apes are the best.
Oh my god,
the beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's like the Mona Lisa. They're beautiful.
They're beautiful.
Not once have human hands touched a bored ape and not been singed due to their impurity.
If you are in the same realm as a bored ape, your life force will drain from you faster because it can't be as beautiful as that. It's just what happens.
Bored apes are the Silmarils of our time, truly.
So I don't know. I can't tell you all the sons who were there because I didn't write it down, but I can tell you the ones who die, and it's Kiform, Caranthir, and Curufin. I think Maedhros and Maeglin are there too, but they live. But they kill everybody. Dior dies. They kill them. This is the second kinslaying. The first one happened way a long time ago. Mm-hmm. This is the second kinslaying, and the third one will come in about 3 more years. So the 2 and 3 happen back to back, but the first one is really far away.
Yeah, because the Sons of Feanor are like, we haven't killed anyone over these Silmarils in a little bit, so we're just gonna do that a bunch quick right here.
So Elwing manages to escape, and Elwing is Dior's daughter, and she escapes with the Silmaril. So they escape to Sirion, which is like a river or something.
Yeah, river valley area by river. Yeah.
That's the ruin of... Oh, yeah, Doriath, they destroy it. They,
Yep.
They sack Doriath, and it doesn't exist anymore.
Goodbye, Nargothrond.
Yep.
Goodbye, Doriath.
Okay, so this is the next chapter of Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin. I wonder what's going to happen here. Okay.
You know the thing that Tolkien's been setting up about... So far, 2 hidden elvish cities have fallen due to Morgoth and betrayal. I wonder what the third one is gonna happen. What's gonna happen here? The most hidden of hidden ones.
No, there's no way. It's beautiful. There's no way.
There wasn't a whole chapter about the guy who would cause it.
He's probably fine. He's probably fine. So, Tuor, son of Huor, who just, I know, brother to Hurin. Brother to Hurin. We didn't talk about this, but his wife's name is Ryan. I know it's Rian, but I like saying it Ryan, just like I like calling him Nathan. Tuor grows up with the Grey Elves, the Sindarin, right? We all know. Well, of course we know.
Of course,
Of course. But they don't live. They live like in a mountain or whatever, and they're gonna go to Sirion. And on the way, he gets captured by orcs. Tuor is a human being, not an elf, but he's raised by elves. He gets captured by orcs. He escapes, and he fucks shit up. And there's like a bounty on his head. This is always happening. Turin had a bounty on his head. This guy has a bounty on his head. Ulmo is like, So, okay.
Ulmo, again, is Poseidon.
Right.
He's the only sort of Valar who is still sort of hanging around with the peeps.
Because he loves them, and he loves, and he wants to help. And he doesn't specifically say this, but Ulmo is like, I need Tuor to warn Gondolin about, like, they need to leave. So Tuor feels, he like magically puts a drive in him to go to Nevrast, which is, it's one of the places. And then further,
there's so many places where, like, if a place isn't mentioned more than 4 times a page, I tune it out.
Yeah. But Nevrast is, I believe, where Turgon had been when Ulmo told him to create Gondolin in the first place.
Now you're saying nonsense words that my brain did not process.
Well, this is, he goes to Nevrast, and then further he goes to the halls of Vinyamar, and here he finds a sword and armor that Turgon had left there a long time ago because Ulmo mysteriously told him to, and now it is revealed that he told him to do that, so when Tuor shows up wearing the sword and armor, Turgon will know that he's the messenger of Ulmo come to tell him to leave Gondolin. Hey.
Wow.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I'm married, can you believe it? All right.
That's like earlier when you said Thingol hired dwarves to put the Silmaril into Naglamir. I was like, I can't even.
I'm torturing you, like I'm making you watch Hurin TV or whatever. Hurin TV. We find the name for the episode.
Hurin
TV. He goes. Tuor then goes to Gondolin. Hang on. Let me just. I'm about to do it again. Veronwë, the Noldoran elf mariner, who now hang on. Remember, you may not, but Turgon sent a bunch of people, 7 ships, to go seek help when they were doing the 4th battle. Maybe?
Yeah, like a long time ago.
And only one
ask
survived.
The Valar, right?
Yes.
They're like,
only
they'll
one
probably
survived.
all say no, you'll probably all die, but hey, we gotta try.
Right. And Veronwë was the one that survived, and he leads Tuor to Gondolin, and then, well, he leads him to Gondolin almost, and then the Eagles take him the rest of them. Oh, no, that's not true. They get, and they're like taken as prisoners, which is always happening. It happened to Maeglin and Eol, and it'll happen again. But just one fun fact about this. This is also another thing. They see Turin on the way there. They're like, they see a tall man dressed in black holding a black sword, which is just so fun. That doesn't need to happen, but it just lets you know the perspective. Like, these things are happening at the same time. They can't have 2 stories on the same page so that you know they're happening at the same time. So, they are taken as prisoners at Gondolin. Turgon sees the armor. He knows what's up. Tuor says, Turgon, you need to leave Gondolin. Ulmo told me. Turgon's like, fuck that. He's like, we're not leaving. We're awesome. And then he breaks. There's no entrances anymore because he destroys them all. And
yeah, Turgon is like, why would it stop being secret now? It's been secret forever. We're not going anywhere.
Right.
Famous last words.
Famous last words. He shuts off the word completely. He gets word of what happened at Doriath and all this bad stuff, and he's like, I don't care. And Tuor and Idril, remember we talked about Idril a long time ago?
Well, I don't remember Idril at all.
Idril is Maeglin's cousin, and Idril, and
he's like Maeglin's like in love with her a little bit.
But Idril loves Tuor, so Maeglin hates Tuor, and Tuor and Idril have a son named Ariandil.
Right, and he is
the
very
guy in the
important.
Spaceship, which I know that sounds crazy, but
he's Elrond's dad in the spaceship.
Yes. They fall in love. They have the kid. Idril makes a secret escape route unbeknownst to anybody, because nobody's allowed in. It's also unbeknownst to Morgoth. He never finds out about this escape route. Maeglin, he's like a smith, right? And so he keeps leaving Gondolin, even though he's been told not to.
Because Maeglin is Eol's son, the Dark Elf.
And they love smithing.
And they love smithing. They made the black sword that Turin has. So it all connects.
He gets captured by Morgoth, and he gives up the location of Gondolin under the promise that Morgoth will deliver him Idris, which is gross. And the city is attacked during a festival, just like the fucking last time Morgoth attacked a big elven city in Valinor at the beginning of the book also happened during a festival.
Hey, elves, I have some advice for you, elves. Stop having festivals.
When there's like a war brewing on the horizon.
No, just don't. If you never have a festival, Morgoth can never do anything bad for you.
He won't attack you.
He's always waiting for a festival to do it.
Everyone fucking dies. Turgon dies.
Balrogs, orcs, dragons,
Balrog, orcs,
wolves, werewolves, maybe?
I hope. Vampires? Tuor throws Maeglin off the city walls. Tuor, Idril, and Eredil escape. They are assailed by a Balrog. Some have speculated this is not Gothmog, but the second most powerful Balrog, or who cares. Glorfindel is there. Now, Glorfindel and the Balrog, they kill each other, but it is the same Glorfindel.
Is it? I thought it was just a different guy.
It is the same Glorfindel, because elves, even when they die, they don't die. Their spirits go to the halls of Mandos.
Yep.
And Manwë saw what Glorfindel did, and in the Second Age sends him back to Middle-earth, almost as like a Maya, not even like an elf. He's like super powerful to help, and then obviously he, as we know, saves Frodo and Co. at the from the Nazgul. I mean, he also does stuff like during the battle. There's like stuff. So, the Unfinished Tales and like the Fall of Numenor and the Children of Húrin are all individual books that have like more details about this stuff specifically. Like the Unfinished Tales is like where you would know it's the same Glorfindel. That's not in the same Silmarillion, but like
and these are all these based on Tolkien's like notes and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
The specific ones are more like Christopher Tolkien than they are Tolkien. I mean, even this is more Christopher Tolkien than it is Tolkien, but
sure.
It's still Tolkien, and they, help. It's still canon. I don't know if the Unfinished Tales are not finished, so there's not they're just like cool more details in them, so
unless Eru Ilúvatar sends Tolkien back to us from the halls of Mandos.
Oh my god, I wish. I wish.
If there was one guy.
Just one guy.
He could send back.
Oh my god, that's true. Because he was... What I wouldn't
give to read... No, he was barren on his gravestone, so he's not coming back. Well, he gets to come back once.
No, you do get to come back once. He hasn't come back yet. He's like, Jesus! Came back once. Tuor and Co., they go to Sirion, and they meet the Doriath refugees, and Elwing, and Gil-galad is there, who is named the High King of the Noldor. Gil-galad, as in... Elendil and Gil-galad, as in The Last Alliance, as in fighting Sauron in 2,000 years. Ulmo goes to the Valar to help, but Manwë says, he's like, nope, only somebody who is of the kindred can come and ask us for help. This doesn't count. We don't get involved. And so he's like, fine. And so he goes back, and Tuor sails with Idril into the west. And he is joined... The book says he is joined to the Noldor like a human being. Tuor is a human being, and he gets to be an elf? ?
Yeah.
He gets to be an elf in Valinor because he grew up with them, and so it's not like it's totally knew were weird, and he's married to an elf.
Because he was like fostered by the elves,
Yeah,
which is like an old medieval thing. Or I guess it's a medieval thing where you send your son and or daughter to live with a close alliance so that their kids grow up together, so they have a stronger alliance later.
And so he gets to be an elf, and it's very sweet. That story ends very nice. And then we get so begins the final chapter of the Silmarillion, Arendelle and the War of Wrath. So Arendelle, he marries Elwing of Dios of Beren and Luthien. Dior of Beren and Luthien. They have 2 kids, Elrond and Elros.
Yes, that Elrond.
Elrond. Círdan, the shipwright, he builds a ship called the Vingalet, and so that Arendelle can go on a voyage to find his mom and dad and plead with the Valar, but he didn't make it because the way to the west, it's not like the ocean is long, it's also like enchanted. You can't just it's really hard to find your way through there. But he's still on his boat. He doesn't come back. Elwing still has the Silmaril. Feanor's sons figure this out, and they march on Sirion, and they do the 3rd and final kinslaying. Sirion is destroyed. Maedhros and Maglor are the only 2 sons of Feanor who are left. Elwing casts herself into the sea, or is cast into the sea, it is vague, and Elrond and Elros are captured. But Olmo brings Elwing back up, turns her into a bird, ? And she goes to the boat that Arendelle is sailing, and they mourn, and they think Elrond and Elros are going to be killed by Maglor, but actually it's not true, and Elrond and Elros become super tight, close buddies with Maglor, which is just a weird little detail. But now, Arendelle has the Silmaril, and so they can make it into Valinor because it lights the way. And Manway's like, wow, that was sweet. I can't believe you did that. Yeah, we'll help. But you're not allowed to leave anymore. You have to stay here. And in fact, not only do you have to stay here, you have to choose whether or not you want to be an elf or a man, because you're half elven.
Yep.
And
because they are still the descendants of Beren and Luthien, right?
And this will also extend the choice of your children. So Arendelle and Elwing choose to be elves. Elrond obviously chooses to be an elf, and Elros chooses to be a man, and that is where the Numenor comes from.
Yeah, that's very cool that he's the first king of Numenor, is Elrond's brother, and chooses to be a human.
Which also means that Aragorn and Elrond are related. Fun fact.
Yep.
But I mean, way deep.
Thousands of years.
But still, they are related.
That means they can't date.
Right. Yeah, they're not allowed to date. Okay, now this is going to sound crazy. They're like, well, you have to stay here, but we're going to make your boat a spaceship. And Arendelle says, okay. And so it gets lifted up through the heavens and into the void and goes on adventures and appears as a star because he has the Silmaril on his brow.
Because this is the last Silmaril, and isn't sort of Manway's fuck these Silmarils, man. If we have one, it's just put it in space.
Yeah, it's fine.
Just put it in space.
Yep. And
now it's a star.
Elwing learns to be a bird. She learns to turn into a bird whenever, and so sometimes they fly.
Takes bird classes.
Literally, she does take bird classes, but she doesn't come with him into space because space is scary, and he just does that by himself. It's also... Hang on, I want to make sure I'm right about this. Yeah, he's Venus. Arendelle is cool. Venus. Just a fun fact. Because that's
my flat Earth theory. I don't believe Venus exists. I think it's an elf with a Silmaril.
It's from his a poem that led to it's one of the first things he wrote. The Voyage of Arendelle, the Evening Star.
Cool.
And the Evening Star is what is another name for Venus, so that's how we get to it. It's also based on
go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's based on the old English legend and a real star that exists in real life, like Arendelle. It's a little different, but it is. Yeah,
that's cool.
It's also later in Numenor, at the end of the Numenor section. It doesn't specifically say this, but it's a little bit of Einsteinen from the Dispossessed. It's and then they called Numenor Atlantis, and you're like, whoa!
Yeah, right. Well, that's what we said last time. Tol Eressëa is supposed to be England.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
And there's no way it's that pretty. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, because they all got bad teeth and they eat
And they don't have a
bangers and mash.
Palantir. There's no bangers and mash on Tolkien.
Yeah, King Charles doesn't have a Palantir, so, you know.
Oh my God, can you imagine if he did? We'd be doomed.
He's just looking at, I don't know, TikToks all day or whatever.
That's what he uses the Palantir for, is the internet. He thinks it's his cell phone.
Yeah, he can't use the phone.
King Charles.
He's too old to use the phone, but he can use the Palantir. Dude, King Charles can tweet on a Palantir.
That's true.
Can't tweet on a phone.
Does. No.
And he does. I was
Okay,
going to say, this is
yeah.
where, like, the curse of Mandos and
yeah, it's
Fëanor
done.
and everything is all done. Because Arendelle is like, forgive everyone. And Manway's like, I'll talk to Eru. And Eru's like, we need to be done.
But in order to be done, they do need to do one more thing, which is probably kill Morgoth. They should probably deal with that once and for all. So this is the big final battle. This is where, you know, men mostly join Morgoth, but 3 houses join the Valar. They're like winning and they're kicking ass, and then the dragons that fly show up, and Calagon the Black shows up, the biggest dragon ever. Ariandil and Thorondor versus Calagon the Black, and Ariandil wins. Woohoo!
Yay!
Spaceship fight with a dragon is so crazy, and that is what happens. Morgoth gets captured. The Silmarils get taken, and the topography of Beleriand is changed.
Well,
Beleriand gets all fucked up.
They take the crown, and they're like, hey, Morgoth, this will make a sweet collar for you. So, like, they turn into a collar. And they're like, hey, remember this chain?
It's a chain from what's-his-face from the very beginning.
Yeah, from the last time. And they chain him up again and throw him into the void.
Yep, which is space. And Ariandil is up there protecting the world from Morgoth in space. So now they have the Silmarils, and the word is, like, Morgoth is dead, or he's captured, and he's never allowed to return again. So all of the elves, we're going back to Aman. We're going back to Valinor. And not everybody goes, but especially Maedhros and Maglor don't go. And they're like, fuck that, because Eonwë, the Herald of Manwë, who is in the story before, but the story just expects you to remember that.
I definitely had to look up, like, who is he? Because there's Eonwë and Elwë and Manwë, and I'm like, who is this guy? But yes, he's the Herald of Manwë.
He shows up and he says, listen, this Fëanor business can end, but you need to come back and you need to apologize, and I'm sure it'll all be fine, but you do need to do that. Maglor wants to do that, but Maedhros says, no, we can take the Silmarils and we can be fine. And so that's what they do. They sneak into Eonwë's camp and they kill a bunch of elves and they steal the 3 Silmarils. Actually, maybe they don't kill elves, but anyway, they steal Silmarils, and then and Eonwë's like, fine, whatever, you can have them. But they can't handle it, and Maedhros throws himself into a fiery chasm with...
Well, because he picks it up and it, like, burns his hand.
Yeah, like,
and then
burning
he's
his
like,
hand.
oh no, it's all been for naught. In searching for the Silmarils, we've turned ourselves so unpure that we can't even touch the Silmarils. So he takes him and his Silmaril, and he throws himself and the Silmaril into a fiery chasm.
And Maglor just throws his into the sea, and he walks the beaches singing sad songs forever. And all the elves of Beleriand are pardoned, and they're allowed back in Valinor, and the curse of Mandos is over. And everything's fine. And that's the end of the Silmarillion.
Well, there's like 5 elves who stay in Middle-earth. Círdan, Galadriel, Celeborn, Gil-galad, and Elrond.
Yep.
Right.
Nicely done.
I'm looking at the chapter summary right now.
But yes, they stay, which is important. And just I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we probably should talk about Numenor. Okay, so Numenor, the men that helped fight the good fight, and Elros, because he was there too, and he chose to be a man, they get Numenor, which is like a cool island, right? Yep. And it's this beautiful place, and it's like Valinor without being Valinor, because they're like, listen, you're not allowed to come over here, and whatever you do, don't. And so for 2,000 years, they don't. And Numenor is awesome, and it's king shit, but slowly,
and
like
then
all
one
empires,
guy starts getting really worried about dying.
Yep.
Which, who could have foreseen... Eru Ilúvatar's like, I'm going to make these people die, but also, like, but they're never going to be worried about it. But then one guy is really worried about it. And so he makes friends with Sauron, because he's like, oh, Sauron, can you help me with this dying stuff? And they start a cult of human sacrifice.
They do.
And we talked about this in the appendix where, what's his name?
Ar-Pharazôn.
They make a fleet and they try to sail to Valinor, and the Valar are like, okay, clean start. They destroy everything. But the important part is there's a faction that is against Ar-Pharazôn, and they like prepped some ships in case this went badly. And they're the ones that escaped Middle-earth.
And Isildur and Anarion. Yes.
Who start Gondor and all that stuff in Middle-earth. But, Eru and the Valar get all mad, and they're like, this is the final straw. And they reshape the world again.
And it's around this time. And there's a cool line where, like, sailors who sail the ocean and come all the way back, they're like, all the roads bend back towards where we come from.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, oh my God.
It's really cool, because he talks about, like, there's the straight road to Aman. Mm-hmm. Like, if you can find the straight road, because the world used to be flat and you could be able to sail straight, but now all roads bend because the earth is round. I think that is very cool, and just I think a beautiful poetic way of putting all that and making it like it's a different dimension, but it's not. But it's also poetic because the world was changed. I don't know. I thought it was really cool.
No, it's cool. And then the very last chapter of the book, the Silmarillion, is there's some new stuff here which we'll talk about, but mostly it's a recap of what happens after with Sauron and the rings. So I'm not really sure we've ever said this or talked about this, but so how the rings, like how any of that starts is
because up to now no rings.
There's been no rings. Actually, there's this weird part. The weird thing about like the Numenor chapter and then this chapter is there's like a part in the Numenor chapter where he's like, and Sauron remembered all that business with the rings, and you're like, what? And then it happens in the next chapter, and you're like, oh, why is that out of order? But whatever. So Sauron, he's like handsome, or he can make himself handsome. He can make himself Anatar, which is like the sweet elf. And Elrond and Gil-galad are like, this Anatar guy is way too nice. We cannot let him hang out at the Grey... Oh, yeah, because at the end of the Silmarillion, they found the Grey Havens. Or at the end of the... When Numenor falls, they found the Grey Havens, which is where they take the ships from to go to the straight road, now that we know how that works. And he travels all over, and he finds these Anatar finds these elven smiths, and he's like, Celebrimbor, I know you love making rings, buddy. How about we make some rings, buddy?
I do. I really, really do.
And so they make a bunch of rings, and then Celebrimbor makes 3 rings just for shits and giggles. He just makes them, but him and Sauron make the rest of the rings, and then as soon as Sauron gets home, he puts on the ring, and then all of the elves wearing the rings instantly realize the betrayal and just take the ring. They're like, all right. They just take the rings off.
Like Sauron made a secret one, and he's like, these will control the other ones. And as soon as he puts it on, the elves are like, all right, so we've been tricked.
But he manages, with the rings that they made together, he gives 9 to 9 schmucks. The Nazgul, the
Nazgul, the 9 schmucks.
He gives 7 to the Dwarf Lords. But the
classic, like in that famous poem, that we all know.
Sauron attacks the elves. He kills Celebrimbor. He gets driven back. Yada yada yada. Eventually, the Númenóreans attack Sauron when he's weak. Bring Sauron to Numenor. Numenor falls. Sauron is destroyed. His form. He flees back to Mordor to become evil. The Eye of Sauron and whatever. He goes to Mirkwood, which was called the Greenwood, and thus the Council of the White
starts.
The Astari, the Hobbits.
He's the necromancer, and
it says out loud like what the Astari are. So the Astari are what men call wizards, and they are Maiar sent. Because Mithrandir has been in the story the whole time, but he hasn't done anything. But Mithrandir, Gandalf, is sent, and Cúrinin, Saruman, are sent, and Radagast, and the 2 blue wizards, who we never ever see, but there are 2 blue wizards.
But they're somewhere else doing stuff.
They're in the east doing stuff. And they join the council, and Galadriel and Elrond are also part of the council, and we know what happens from there.
Yep.
All the silly stuff. And just one fun thing at the very end, it actually does describe like what it feels like taking the straight road. So like your boat like sails out of the Grey Havens, and then it's as if like the water itself like lifts it up into the heavens, which is how Mithrandir, what happens to Mithrandir at the end of his adventure. And I always get I get a little teary-eyed when the book re-mentions that, and so it was the hobbits, like the hands of the weak will serve when the wise fail.
Yeah, the one time it mentions hobbits is like, and some people destroyed the rings, or like they went with the ring bearer up the. It says until the seas of the bent world fell away beneath it, which is very cool.
So cool.
And the winds of the round sky troubled it no more, and borne upon the ancient airs above the mists of the world, it passed into the ancient west, and an end was come for the Eldar of story and of song.
And that's it. And the Eldar leave.
That's why we get our world. That's why we have Jeff Bezos and Tim Apple and...
You could say, Sauron... Well, I guess that's not true. I guess Morgoth is still around. That could be Morgoth's evil. That is like what evil is. It's like Morgoth's evil influence from outer space. It's like that is what evil is. Just a fun thing about Sauron is that Sauron is like completely and totally destroyed because he put all of his essence into the One Ring, and then they destroyed the One Ring, and then he gets destroyed, which is just a fun fact.
So you're telling me Morgoth is like Thanos, like sitting on a throne, like in space?
On a moon.
There's rings. I guess there's
9 rings to collect. I mean, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but that is it with J.R.R. Tolkien.
I know. Now, I'll be honest. It's been a long time. It's been like almost half the podcast that we've been doing so far has been Tolkien stuff. I'll say it. I'm a little bit Tolkiened out, but I'm glad that we did it. I think it was worthwhile.
Yeah.
So now that we are at the end of the Silmarillion, Mac, do you have any final thoughts about it, about Tolkien's work as a whole? I guess these sort of 3 main works that we've read. And then we'll go on and do our very logical and sensible rating system. And then I have some fun 1-star Goodreads reviews about the Silmarillion that we can read.
This has got to be the coolest thing ever. My coolest, most favorite thing ever is all of this. Like, there's no other way for me to describe it. I've been biased this whole time. This is just... it is just so awesome. Like, not even if you like any of it, but just to appreciate the achievement and the creativity and the hard work that went into creating something like this, and the restraint to not mention any of this Silmarillion stuff in the Lord of the Rings. Like, just to be able... I feel like this is what people are trying to replicate when they create like their world building first. Like writers will try to be like create this fantasy world and then do a story because that's like what Tolkien did. But the difference is he also understood, like he had restraint and knew like with a deft hand.
It's like an iceberg, It's like you don't
exactly.
I think a lot of we get because I think Tolkien was like a professional professor. He wasn't a professional author. So like he wasn't like this was his hobby. He wasn't like motivated by I have to put out a book this year so I can like put food on the table. So he could spend I'm going to spend 10 years on this Silmarillion stuff and invent Quenya, and then that's sort of the big iceberg, and then the little tip is you have the Lord of the Rings. And like you said, the restraint to have that, he was so clearly aware of like what made a good story that like we didn't need to know anything about the Silmarils and the kinslaying and Fëanor and all that stuff. But that informs what came later, and even Numenor, to really enjoy the story. He like knew it was a story about a couple little guys who did a really cool thing once.
Yeah,
and it was really hard.
It's just like, it's incredible. I love it so much. Danylo, what about you? This is the first Odyssey through any of this. What did you think?
I definitely have a greater appreciation of it. I definitely like it a lot more. I think I definitely went in thinking it was sort of more boilerplate fantasy. Like I knew it was because he was a professor and like there's like scholars who study his work that like, oh, it's probably like a level above, normal fantasy stuff. But I guess it didn't really click until I read all of it that like it really does feel on another level, or like as you read it, like even the order we read things, it felt like it leveled up each time. Like The Hobbit is like normal fantasy book, and then Lord of the Rings is like, oh man, this is on another level, literary story. And then Silmarillion is like, oh, this is this big history, So I think I definitely appreciate it a lot more. I definitely like it a lot more. It's definitely more complex than I thought it was going to be. Like, there's a lot to talk about in the story of Turin Turumbar and like the themes and what that means and all that stuff, which I did not expect to get from this stuff. And I really liked it, even though I am a little bit Tolkiened out at this point.
Yeah. And Tom Bombadil is never mentioned once in the Silmarillion, and he's the oldest creature alive, so what the fuck? What am I supposed to do with that? Yeah,
it's
awesome.
Great. It's great. I think you make a really good point about this is sort of what a lot of modern fantasy is trying to be, but I think the reason it's not is because Tolkien wasn't trying to make a story first. Like, that's the other thing, like, with all this world building, is a lot of authors know that their end goal is like a epic story or something, so they'll sort of make the world building, not to say that it's too lazy, but they'll like do just enough of it of what they need to like write their story, because that's the main goal. But like, it's clear you don't write something like the Silmarillion if your end goal is to write the Lord of the Rings. Like, he was just doing the Silmarillion because this is what he wanted to do and what he found interesting.
With, like, weird poems about the mariner who sailed the stars, and how does that end up being about Frodo Baggins taking the ring to Mordor? Like,
yeah,
it's so cool.
Like, you can't plan it out unless you are being driven by your passion for this thing and just pure imagination and skill and taste first. If you're trying to do some sort of end product, I don't think you end up with something like this, or a body of work that's this like complex and rich and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's all I have to say. Fucking awesome.
What would you rate the Silmarillion?
0 Mistborns, Danylo. 0.
Yep, 0 Mistborns.
Absolutely
I'm there
0.
too.
I mean, like, one, it's not really barely even a book, and two, it's it's like the scope and the artistry in creating something like this is beyond anything that Brandon Sanderson can ever hope to create in his life ever.
Because how are you supposed to make a Silmarillion when you're pumping out, multiple novels a year? Like, it just requires so much. Like, you have to sit and think, and you're like, maybe where does that star come from? Which I don't know if we can't bring up Brandon Sanderson every episode, but like, that's just not his MO, which is fine. It's just very different. It is fine,
but it's like, and I'm not saying there's plenty of fantasy novels I like that don't have what is literally called a legendarium, but I'm just saying this makes me appreciate the Lord of the Rings so much more. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and there's a richness you get that I don't think you can fake when you do all the groundwork for this. For like, you do all the quote unquote useless or like the waste, the stuff that doesn't even end up in the story. I'm just thinking of, we're both making our way through like the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and like that whole series was like 10 years of tabletop role playing before like they were all written down. Which, like, I think one person working in the course of 1 year, like, you can't fake that level of background and world building and all that stuff without the time and the effort and the quote unquote waste, which is sort of what this is if what you're trying to get to is Lord of the Rings. But you also don't get Lord of the Rings unless you sort of do this,
Yeah. And it also has the guts to be like, on some stuff, it's like, and no one knows why this is happening, but it is. I love that. Preserve the mystery a little bit.
Yep.
All right, Danylo, how about these 1-star Goodreads reviews?
Yeah. It's funny because I was looking through them, and it's a lot of them are just right. Like, this was boring and dry, and it's like, yes.
And that's
like,
awesome.
I could not get through this, and I'm like, you know what? Fair. That's very fair. I thought funny. One guy named Richard D says 1 star. I hated it with the heat of 1,000,000,000,000 suns, like everything else Tolkien, and $1 billion bloody dollars for this TV show, 250 million for the Tolkiens alone, against the wall economic royalists. Which I don't know.
This guy has no idea what he's talking about.
I think he's mad that other people are spending money for things. I don't know.
Is he mad? He's mad about the Rings of Power, the show.
Yeah, I know.
It's not even based on the Silmarillion. Like, you fucking moron.
It's very funny.
Richard B.
This was a paragraph, because a lot of them are fairly well thought out. Like, a lot of them was like, I couldn't finish this. It was boring.
Yeah, we can't make fun of those people, though.
Fair. Yeah, I know. Like, they're right. Like, it's just about like a history book. There was no character development. I'm like,
you're like,
you work. Yes,
correct.
Yep, you're right. The same reason some people rated 5 stars. This section of this review is really funny. It said, despite some really interesting concepts, many things seem too implausible for the world. For example, there's one part where a pair of good guys get past a single door guard and are therefore able to sneak all the way into the heart of the BBEG's complex. What kind of a dumbass has only a single line of defense between the front gate and the throne room, and the BBEG is eventually defeated through a total deus ex machina, not from the humans and the elves who are the focus for most of the story, but by gods and spirits who decide to banish him into the void? It's like, go to a D&D campaign.
Yeah,
the fact that you're calling it the BBEG.
Also, it's like
which stands for big bad evil guy, right?
Right. Yeah, and I love the Baron. He's talking about Baron and Luthien there, and the wolf. But it's not as if it's like, yeah, it's like a fairy tale. Like, what is the problem? You fucking idiot.
Like the elves don't defeat Morgoth. God comes down and defeats Morgoth. It's like, so.
Yeah, so, and also the elves are there too. The elves and man are also fighting there.
It's just it's very funny, I think, when people try to like apply that level of like what they like, I don't know, like what a video game is to something that's not trying to be a video game. Like this man was born in 1892. Like, come on.
How come his lair only has one line of defense? Because it's like the biggest, scariest lion ever, or whatever, a big wolf.
Yeah, right. Who cares? Another one says, remember phone books? This was about as worthwhile and gripping as reading a phone book, cover to cover. 1 star.
That's pretty funny. I mean, hey, I understand. I can't argue with that.
This one's really funny. It says 1 star. I have always wanted to read this, but unfortunately I can't at the moment. My edition is really closely written with small letters. Might retry it when I get another edition and or new glasses.
And he rated it 1 star?
It's just very funny.
My prescription is off. 1 star. Couldn't physically actually read it. 1 star.
Or didn't want to. It's like the text is too small. Maybe I'll do it later. 1 star. Yeah. I would rather sit in a nest of spiders than attempt to read this book again. 1 star.
Damn. Mirkwood.
This is not really super funny, but this one starts out with, this is the second time I've tried to consume this book, and my immediate thought went, stop trying to eat it. We're supposed to read it. Don't eat the pages. Read it.
God, these books are so hard to consume these days.
He only got maybe 50 pages into it and put it down. It's like, stop eating the pages. You got to read it.
Eating them 1 page at a time, not even like cutting them off and taking big bites. That's crazy, man.
There's no, don't read it. 1 star.
Nice, good.
And fuck you, 1 star.
All right, well, fuck you too, man.
So there you go. That's the Silmarillion.
Danylo, before we wrap up, do you want to share what the plan is for the next episode in case some crazy bastard out there wants to read along?
So, for the next episode, I'm going to read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And I've already started it, and I will present it to Mac and all you listeners of what my journey is like and what I think about it. So a little bit different format.
Yeah, we're gonna try something new. See how we like it.
We'll see how it works, and then just sort of go from there.
I think it might be safe to say that for any big, crazy things, like if we were to do, I don't know, what's a big a Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
we'd read them together. But these like weirder ones we're gonna do, we're gonna try to do them solo and do like a book report. It might be fun.
I think I mean, we did a lot of Tolkien, sort of like a big series. So we'll probably do a lot of one-offs. I think for a bit before we dive into a series, because we started with Mistborn trilogy and then Dune and then I think some one-offs for a little bit will be good.
I think it'll be good too. So if you have any one-off suggestions, please let us know. And
let us know in a
please have it be
5-star
less
review.
than 500 pages or less. Please.
Well, I mean, the Silmarillion is 500 pages or less, but that shit's dense, and each of our episodes on it has been longer than any of our episodes on The Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
So.
There's a lot to talk about, man.
I know.
Well, as always, please leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you thought of the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. You can email us at hardcoverhooligans@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at hardcoverhooligans. Right? Is it Hardcover Hooligans podcast? Okay, yeah. Yep. Hardcover Hooligans. We update about the episodes that are coming out, and thanks for listening.
Friends, if you like this show.
Word of mouth. We are gradually getting more listeners, which is pretty cool. I don't know. Some of you out there must be telling somebody, because we don't really
No one in our personal lives really likes things or these
I've been told to my face by people I love dearly that they won't listen to the podcast. And I get it. I'm not mad. I get it.
My partner of 6 years said she will only listen to it if we do Twilight, which we will.
Which we will. We are going to.
We will, but she's not listening to the Silmarillion. That is 100% sure.
No way. So thanks, nerds. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And that's a wrap on Tolkien.
That's it. Don't ask us to do... We're not doing the Unfinished Tales now. We might do it one day, but we're not doing it now.
Yeah, not anytime soon.
We're like Mistborn. But, we're starting to come back around on... It's starting to be a lot of time without Brandon Sanderson in my life, Danylo. I don't know.
Oh, no. You can read some. Don't make me read anymore.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I will. Maybe I'll read Trust in the Emerald Sea. We'll talk about it or whatever.
I think we should do that.
All right, anyway. Stay hard, everybody.
All right. Stay hard, folks.